piece that I want to talk, so I work with TRIO programs, and we serve low-income first-generation college students, and it's a federal program that is part of legislation that came into the Economic Act and the Education Act in the 1960s. So it related to educational justice. And with the current research looking at college students, that's one of these things of connections, is that with the college student, can you separate food justice from education justice? So again, this is what I do, and I'm also the co-chair. Here's a list of student food and housing security at NC State. That's known as the PAC Essentials Steering Committee. And so at NC State, we have the PAC Essentials program that was started about 2 or 3 years ago, and that was to meet the needs, the basic needs for students. That's based upon a research study that was done on campus in 2017 that found that 9.6% of NC State students had experienced homelessness in the past year, and 14% had experienced food insecurity in the past 30 days. So then the campus responded to that, seeing it as a pervasive issue. So the PAC Essential Steering Committee, though, is a standalone, just a group of concerned citizens on campus. We have no formal reporting structure to any department or person. It's just, again, just a group that's not really that affiliated with the university. And so we have a specific mission. The university has not stated a mission. They've not kind of put a mission on the books, but they have regarded student basic needs. And the piece that we're going to kind of really focus on is that all NC States will have access to the nutritious and culturally appropriate. And because of those two factors are a blind spot for campus food pantries, or our campus food pantry, and I'll kind of go into the potentially negative impact of how the university manages that and deals with that food pantry. So again, the connection between education justice, food justice. We'll go into the more specific college student hunger, and based on the most recent study that was done in 2020, and then SNAP benefits as the nationally agreed unanimously that this is the most impactful, best, not solution, but attempt at a solution for college student food insecurity, where we are now, and then what we can do. And again, we're going to focus on not meeting the needs of one student, but meeting the needs of the 7,000 students who had experienced food insecurity in the past 30 days in 2020. That was for that research report. Interrupt, yell, you can raise your hand. It's a little bit different when there's 30 people. So please raise your hand and have an open discussion. I can stop at any time and we can go off on tangents, obviously. So nationally, only 10% of low-income first-generation college students graduate within 4 years. And this has not changed since the TRIO programs were created in the 1960s. So there's been no move in increasing those graduation rates. At NC State, we can't really compare that number because NC State doesn't collect that specific data. But what we can look at is 52% of Pell Grant students graduated within 4 years compared to 62% of non-Pell Grant. So as a result of the student or the system, are students who receive the Pell Grant less committed, less intelligent, whatever. So, or is it a systematic issue? So then in the most recent study that was done in surveyed students in October of 2020, for during COVID, that food insecurity rate was rated at 23%, where again, as I said, is 2017, that was 14%. So again, almost a 10% increase in 3 years. Housing insecurity was 33%, and that there's another number that goes along with that. The number for homelessness is, whoops, how do I go back? Yep, sorry. Of actual homelessness is less than this 33, but that's the piece of housing insecurity we'll see, is that impact upon students, even academics, personal health, well-being. So those students who are food and housing insecure, 70% of them had a poor well-being compared to 55% of all respondents. So I think it's safe to say that there is a link, and I'm sure Veronica knows that is, a link between health and access to food and housing. So that's where it's not just is like, oh, I didn't have enough for that month. That is saying like that larger impact of our students with regard to like their overall well-being. So again, is this the result of a student not taking care of themselves, being drug addicts, whatever, making poor lifestyle decisions, or is this a systematic issue? Is something not working for food and housing insecure students and their ability to be fully functioning human beings? So here's more of the direct survey data. So the homelessness, so with the homelessness rate of 15%. So again, that is couch surfing for an extended period of time, that's sleeping outside, that's sleeping in public places. So that is a very dramatic number. That is higher than the national percentage for four-year institutions. That is at the level of community college students on a national level. So of these that are food and housing insecure, 85% are working, poor wellness, and again, 81% difficulty in engaging in studying for that period of time. So again, so when you look at, say, the lower grades, or not participating in high impact activities, not engaging with the university and those things, is that, when we just look at that student group, again, is that a result of the student, or is that a result of the systems that have put them at those levels of food and housing insecurity? And is that being taken into account by the university or instructors or whatnot? And so then again, the risk is just not proportionate for certain, again, groups of students. So is it like the students' poor choices as an individual that has led to this situation, or is it a result of systems in higher education? So, and that's the piece too, is higher education is set up for the traditional student. It is not set up for students who are parents. Transfers from community colleges, that's only a new thing that NC State is focusing on. And again, international students, first gen, the higher education system has not changed in probably 500 years. It's set up in the same way. And so it's not working it's putting at a serious disadvantage of certain groups of students that has nothing to do with their commitment or intellectual abilities. And back to where we had the rates of graduation for Pell Grant recipients, again, they're at higher levels of food insecurity. They're at higher levels, or kind of, but levels of homelessness. And the piece here at NC State that we need to be concerned about is, one, only 22% had ever used the food pantry. And they were more likely to use the emergency fund. So at NC State, you can only apply for the emergency fund twice. So this means this high risk, most at need population can no longer use that emergency fund. That is no longer a resource for them. Students who are first generation, and so that's where their parents or guardians did not graduate with a 4-year degree. And higher, again, even with food insecurity. So why would that matter? If my parents did not graduate with a 4-year college degree, why would I be more food insecure? Does anybody have any ideas about that? Yes, yeah, go Haley, just interrupt. We're all friends here.
Sorry, I'm also trying to clean my room a little bit. It's been a busy day. But typically, you know, if your parents didn't get a 4-year education, they would likely have a less high-paying job or less disposable income in the family, which could mean already being food insecure. And if you're food insecure as a child, that still has some of the same effects where you may not be able to focus in school or be as academically inclined. And it kind of creates this positive feedback loop where your primary, I guess, priorities are just surviving day to day, and you're not really able to think further, or even think that you could do something, I guess, like school.
Yeah, I mean, and then if you think of like what resources or safety nets did you rely on when COVID hit? And Graceland's the only student on here. But so say for the students who lost their jobs on campus because it closed down and they were given like 2 weeks notice, and that was their only safety net. That was the only thing that provided them with income or money for food. So what are some other safety nets that other students were able to access? So perhaps parents, perhaps you already had budgeted money for food. Perhaps you didn't have to send money home because a lot of the students then were supporting other people and their families. So again, going back to if you have less paying jobs, and then you're off those jobs, like if you don't work, you don't get paid, then that student may be giving money back to the home. And again, we have more likely to have used the emergency fund. That's all gone. We do have a little bit more who used Feed the Pack, but again, it's nowhere near, the pantry is not a solution for these students. So now we're seeing the impact of educational justice, low income first gen, and food justice. So there is that direct connection. And so is it that student or is it the system? So should that student have not given money to sent money home and used that money for food? And so there's no issue, or should that student have not, like they're picking up any shift they possibly can get, or they get a new job that interferes with their current class schedule? Does that mean that they're a poor student? Or does that mean I have to get any job, you know, by any means necessary? So then there's this cycle. So if we start again here, so you're food insecure, and then what happens? Like what can lead next? Graceland, what's something academic that could have?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't, I know just me being busy, there have been like meals that I've skipped And so if you're food insecure and you're skipping meals just because, you don't have meals, and that's gonna like take it out on your like physical well-being, and you have a harder time, you get headaches, have a harder time studying, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So then you have just like day-to-day class performance. And then what happens if you struggle with day-to-day class performance?
And like bad overall class performance.
And then like another one would be then your GPA suffers, or say you are on the grad school track and those are classes in your major, say you're a junior, are you then missing out on references for college because you're not performing well in class? We have one student who she was working like 3 jobs, this is before COVID, but she had an 8 a.m. class in her major, and she kept falling asleep in class, and it was at one of those that had the stadium seating. And so the pencil would fall out of her hand and roll down, and she could tell the instructor was like, yes. And so then she couldn't go for help. She couldn't talk to him because, she's like, well, he thinks, I'm disrespectful and I'm, kind of like a problem in his class. And then we go talk about specifically with COVID, what about Zoom testing, Zoom classes, Zoom requirements? So again, then if you have the stress of having to do those Zoom tests where it's like facial recognition, you have to show your work, like I know that was chemistry and physics. And again, we're going with food insecure, so you're having under-resourced students. So we had students who were sitting in their cars with a light on because that was the only quiet place, or there was multiple people in a bedroom, or do they have to work to get that food? And then you go into not being active too, but like a volunteer, active in their student clubs. So then the other piece to be like that we need to be cognizant of is that to be successful at NC State, it takes much more than just the like human basic needs for sustaining physical survival. So that means internet connection, that means access to technology, that means time to volunteer, to be active on campus. That means access to jobs that are related to graduate school or their profession. So from the recent data, basically it's like more, but actually this is kind of a reasonable number. So of those 7,000 students who were food insecure for those past 30 days in October, how would you describe those students? So when you have a conversation with somebody saying, oh my gosh, there's 7,000 students that are food insecure, and somebody asks like, how is that possible? How would you describe those students or that situation to other people?
Probably this might seem a little big picture, but like victims of a system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's not big picture. That's the truth. What else? We've heard like that can't be true. Or what is food insecure? So you miss a couple of days. Or there's a food pantry, again, when we go back to nutritious, culturally appropriate, when some people have said, well, they need to take, like they're not that desperate if they don't, like their needs aren't met by the food pantry. And so again, with medical dietary restrictions and religious restrictions, you can't ask somebody to say, oh, disregard your health and disregard your religion. That's that's a level of disrespect. And again, like re-victimization, saying we don't see your like your religion and we don't see your medical condition. It is about there is a can of peas available eat it.
Hopping off, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to
ahead.
interrupt, but
No, please
hopping
do.
off of your question of what you said, food, like what is food insecurity? That might be a typical reaction. I think another thing that frequently happens specifically from other students is, oh, well, I've had ramen nights or like XYZ nights where they think of like eating unhealthy not as consequential because they've had to do that from time to time, but it's I guess not understanding the depth or like how prolonged or how consistent these obstacles or barriers are, and also probably not realizing nutritional value themselves and taking that access for granted.
Yeah, Veronica, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have anything to share regarding like food pantries and the value to health, like from a dietitian's point of view?
Just overall, well, personally, just kind of like thinking in terms of like from a student's perspective or from the participants of those food pantries, just kind of finding foods that meet their needs, especially convenient foods, because you know college students a lot of the times just you know have all these other priorities going on, and I think like you know in addition to meeting those nutrient needs, also meeting like needs in terms of like convenience, like you know those frozen or canned foods, for example.
Yeah, and you can give me 10 cans of peas, but how am I going to eat that in the library? Because I'm in the library till midnight. And then even with regard to, it's almost like I want to say like with college campuses, it's like the opposite of a food desert where it's like food opulence, where all the access to food is overpriced. Like I think they did somebody was talking about how, with the C-stores, that even a thing of yogurt went up by $1 in between semesters. And so that's the piece of, there is an abundance of food available. You know, you have Hillsborough Street, but all the C-stores and all the dining halls, but what is the cost of that? And so that food is not accessible. You know, what is the level of, what's an appropriate, like what's an accessible cost? So if a yogurt is $1 above the price that you could get it at Food Lion, is that accessible? And so that's the other piece, is accessibility with cost.
And I'll be honest, in the last session we just got out of, Rose with the Feed the Pack pantry was talking about a statistic that I don't remember the percentage, but so many students who are facing insecurity actually are on a meal plan. And I'll be honest that like even that did shock me. I guess I had just assumed that that a lot of the people experiencing food insecurity didn't have a meal plan. And so thinking about the fact that even the resources that like NC State is providing, that it's like not enough, or like what you were saying with like religion or dietary things, that like just because you have a meal plan might not be that you have like the right one, or that you like, that's a big part of it too.
Right. I mean, because when you look at the cost of meal plans, it's quite a bit. And so for the students who are required to get one, they'll get the commuter. So it's the least amount of money. And if you come from an under-resourced family and you see the cost of a meal, which is, what is it, like $8, $9? I think, does dinner go up to $12 or is it just $10 per like dinner meal, like what you're allotted? But again, what?
I think it's 10. Like, yeah.
10, yeah. So when you see that I'm paying $10 for a meal, it's like, well, I can go to the grocery store and get a lot more for $10. I mean, just even that amount is intimidating. So even if you say an 18, 19-year-old who doesn't have enough of, you know, whatever that may be, so like having resources is that mindset of like scarcity, like I don't have enough. Even if you were to go through like making the proper decision of, well, you're a first-year student, there's no access to other food, you don't have, you know, access to a kitchen, you know, so even though it may be more, this is in your best interest. Again, you have that's a lot of money. And so if it ends up being like, say, $20 a day, so you have a, you know, $8 breakfast, and a $10 dinner, that's that's a lot of money. But how are they going to access any other cheaper food? It's again one of those things where it's like the opposite of a food desert. So when we're talking about action, this is the piece that I think is important to keep in mind, is that Feed the Pack and the meal share is not preventing 7,000 food insecure students. And they put a lot of time and effort for the food pantry to keep that open over COVID. But during COVID, our student population that we're serving went all over the country, all over the state. And so then the Feed the Pack and the meal plan did not meet their needs. But we're still expecting them to take a full course load on Zoom, be active in their clubs, do work remotely, and manage everything. And then also to take into account, sorry, this is like, is the COVID grants and the emergency fund that were used a lot for housing insecure students, was that preventing 10,000 housing insecure students? And so the university, had probably over $30 million in those COVID grants and had $5 million donated to the emergency fund around this time, and still it did not prevent housing insecurity. And so what would you think if you can't pay rent next month? Literally, you do not have enough money in your bank account, and there's not work. How stressed out are you gonna be? Pretty fucking stressed. And then even if you were to get the reduced pay rate, at some point you're gonna have to pay that full amount. And potentially those COVID relief dollars and the emergency fund again there's a serious limitation to that. That is a crisis one-time deal. That does not. So again, when we look at the housing insecure, if they have back payments, so they can't, there's a moratorium on eviction, but still they're going to end up having to pay that. So the piece with the solution. It is confirmed by the government, by all of the national advocacy groups, and experts in college student food insecurity, that SNAP is the solution. So what is SNAP? Somebody? If you're not answering.
I know that you said it
So
replaced. Oh, sorry, Haley.
No, you go ahead, Gracie.
That it replaced WIC, or that it. Is that true?
No.
No. Okay. Then I don't know.
Okay.
My extent of knowing is SNAP is welfare benefits specifically to food. I think that you can't buy non-food items or alcohol or tobacco products with it, but it serves as, I think you get like a monthly compensation for being able to buy groceries.
Yep. Did you want to add anything, Veronica? That you unmuted yourself?
Yeah, I just said refer to it as food stamps. So for people who use SNAP to buy foods at the store, obviously can't be any hot meals. So all the grocery items that you can typically buy, like produce items, prepackaged items, and they also comes in the form of an EBT card that they can use as a as a debit card at a grocery store.
Yep, it's a debit card. Mm-hmm. And then how does a college student apply for SNAP? Mancini?
That I have no clue.
Oh, hold on. LP Mancini, are you a college student? I'm going to put you on this.
Yes, I am.
So how do you apply for SNAP?
I honestly could not tell you. I know that it's a government program, right? So I assume through a government website, possibly through Feeding America would be my guess, but I have no clue.
And Haley, you were going to say something?
sorry, on mute. I was basically going to say the same thing, that I actually don't know where specifically.
Yeah. And so this is one of the challenges, is like the first thing is awareness of it. So what SNAP benefits do college students receive? Because there's a specific program of college, like SNAP for college students, it's, you know, specific. So what benefits do college students receive?
Does NC State recognize it as something that can be used in like C-stores slash like even just in the student union, or do they just give like a different amount of stuff because they're college students?
Yeah, so the C stores aren't SNAP retailers, which we'll get. In a lot of schools, that is, again, we're going back to the food injustice of SNAP. And so how the stigma of SNAP and how people are demonized seriously if they use SNAP. So universities nationally have not become SNAP retailers because they're afraid of who that will attract. Because what if SNAP people come to campus? So people on SNAP are a danger to yourself and others. Yeah. And so that goes back though to that higher education that has not changed, like justice in higher education, of saying there are certain people who we do not want on our campus. You are not welcome, and we will, you know, take efforts to make sure, you know, that you do not walk onto our campus. So let's see if you qualify. And I'm not collecting any information, so it doesn't, I'll put this in the chat box. Can I access the chat box? And now I'm like, okay, no, sorry, I'm just, chat. So if you can take some time, I'm not going to talk for 5-10 minutes till you're able to do that. And again, I'm not collecting any personal information. It's just those basic questions. I'm going to stop that for a second while I'll do that. And I'm trying to be able to see you all so I know, because I messed that up. Now I can't. Oh, here we go. Sorry. I've got serious limitations. I apologize. Okay, did everybody do that? Or are you still working on it?
I'm all finished.
Okay. Now, what are your thoughts when you looked at those qualifications? Do you think there would be students on campus that would qualify? Would you say a lot? Like how many? I mean, just the 20 hours of work volunteer like Graceland, you probably did 40 hours of volunteer in the last 2 weeks, which would qualify you just on volunteering. So this can be a student teaching, unpaid, research, like again, and a combination of that. So just in a guess, I mean, would you say that 5,000 students of 36,000? Because then this takes into graduate students, like master's degree students.
But yeah, I was really surprised. Like, I have my roommates here sitting with me, and we were looking at the survey, and we were like, oh my gosh, we both would qualify for this. So it's like small sample size, but 100% qualification here.
Yeah. And so do I have it listed in there? I don't know if I do. So right now, you would get $225 per month for 6 months. So again, that's a lot of, again, fucking money. But the piece of that is, so say you, and all I see you is LP Mancini. So all I wanted to do is call you Mancini, and I apologize. But that's the piece. So even if you say, well, I'm not food insecure. I mean, I have enough food to buy on a monthly basis. I'm smart about it. I don't. However, what I want to say to you is, or perhaps it's other students, is that saving that money for, again, like say study abroad. How much is the application for study abroad? It's like $425 just to apply. Say saving it for transportation expenses. What happens if your car breaks down? You can't get to work, you can't get to school, etc. Say you are graduating this fall, or like say in August, you're not going to have a paycheck yet. Like say you were offered a job, you're going to have to come up with those relocation fees, down payment on a apartment, all of those different things of setting up, like say a new life. And even if you have a great job where they offer you relocation fees, that's reimbursement. So you're going to have a chunk of money of that. If you have healthcare expenses, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes because that money rolls over on your EBT card, that because you may not need it now, are you one emergency away from needing it? And then you don't have it. Or say you're graduating, or you want to pay back your student loans that are at a higher interest rate. So pay them back earlier, so then you don't have that accrued interest. So because that's going to put you at greater risk of financial insecurity of having those student loan repayments at a higher interest rate. So you're looking at the whole picture. So that's the piece of what can SNAP do. The other piece is, like, as a student, you're allowed to go to the nutritionist once every year for free, but then if you're health insurance, so what would happen if you actually bought foods that were good for your health? Like fresh vegetable, and all of that piece of buying healthy food. And the other piece, which a SNAP person could not say this, but I'm saying it like even with roommates, is a lot of times the person who needs food is not going to ask for it and do it. So sometimes it's going to take you to apply for it, and then you can kind of like communal. And again, you don't say that to a SNAP person because they would say that's illegal and all of that stuff. But that's that piece of looking up like that financial security. Yes, you have food in the refrigerator right now, but what's your emergency fund? What's your transportation budget? What is like going to be your student loan amount that you have to pay off? What are some high impact? Would this help you so that you would be able to volunteer more at a high impact activity and get less hours at Taco Bell? It's going to benefit you professionally. So that's even the piece of that's the long run, the investment of having a career related volunteer activity, less time at Taco Bell. That's going to help you earn more, like your earning potential. So it's being like thinking long term and the promotion of that. So again, I kind of went into why should, but now that you learned all this information, what would you tell your peers about why they should consider SNAP? So Emily, what would you say, like when we get off the talk, what would you say to your friends about SNAP?
I would say that it opens up opportunity, like even if you aren't as in a severe situation and needing access to nutrients and but I would say that it's just important in general for students to be aware of, because it's a resource given to you and all you have to do is apply.
Yep. It's coming from the same budget as those COVID relief funds. So, I mean, and that's what, I was about to say this too, is why is the university and other people not publicizing SNAP as much as they are like the CARE grants and the emergency fund? Why do you think that's true? Or why do you think that's?
Probably, but
oh, go ahead. Sorry, Haley.
oh, sorry. I'm sorry if you also meant for that question to be directed towards Emily. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's you. Anybody.
Okay. So I would think because there's probably still a lot of negative connotations held by both students and administration, like you were saying, of we don't want SNAP people or to attract more people that would be on welfare. I mean, I guess that's like mostly what my answer is, not wanting the association.
And so who told us it's a negative? Who told us SNAP was bad?
Ronald Reagan.
Yes. A bunch of old white men.
I was also going to say, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that also like could also be selfish on the part of the college, that the college or the university wants students to not be getting help from outside, because then they get more money when students have to buy meal plans. So yeah, that like continues the process.
Corporate greed.
Yeah. So a SNAP. So where's even saying over 5,000 students just kind of would be eligible for SNAP? That's more students than go to the food pantry on a monthly basis. So on a monthly basis, university could help kind of confuse that a student would get $225 per month, no cost to the university, no cost to the student. So why would that not be the focus? Because that is where they would meet the mission of nutritious, culturally appropriate, and sustain, and also when you have individuality, you're not on that paternalistic, like you don't have to come and beg. Why wouldn't the university do that? Well, there's a thing that nationally I'll go into, and it's called, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Well, I'll get to the book, Sweet Charity. But anyhow, it makes the donor and the volunteer feel better to have people perform their poverty in front of them. So I see all these people come in and they're coming in because of me. Aren't I doing a great job? Isn't this great to see a line down the street of students for the food pantry? Like, this is why we need a food pantry, because we have a line of students down the street. And I've had some pretty gross conversations with people. Well-meaning, I mean, they're not evil people, but they just are, like uninformed. And so that's the piece of where, if somebody, I don't know if this chat box, but you'll have to monitor it, Grace, because I can't see it, is the fact that also with SNAP, University One can't report those dollars to, again, their ego, again, corporate, like they can't get, but why wouldn't they brag about taking the time and effort to make sure these students get this money? Like, look what we did. We increased SNAP participation by this amount. And so that's the piece. Two is it's the donor. They don't have anybody to bring to Red and White Night to give a trophy to because they donated the more money. So that means that the donors who donated like $5 million, where there's newspaper spreads and, you know, all of that, that's not going to happen if it's one person who, it's a staff member who helps with the SNAP program. That's not exciting. And then you have the stigma of government, that if you would have to admit that your students qualify for SNAP, especially graduate students, is saying, like, if you come to NC State, you are going to be living right at the poverty line. You're going to qualify for SNAP. That is not going to attract graduate students. That is not going to help in the rankings of NC State. So, again, why it's using thousands of dollars. So what is that amount? I think I had it written down at some point. Maybe I kind of zipped through this. So with this gives information about the different reports on SNAP. So you can go back and look at that so you can educate yourselves to learn more. So in North Carolina, 80% of SNAP eligible students never even apply. So this is all college students in North Carolina. So that left $132 million unclaimed. So that's the other thing too, is that some students think, well, I don't want to do SNAP because I'm taking it away from a family or somebody that needs it more. It's like, no, they have a college student SNAP program. So you're not taking it from the WIC program, the families like on disability or anything like that. This is a college student SNAP program. So for the recent research, only 1.8% of NC State students used SNAP. And so then I go, like, what if 50% of those students access SNAP? So that's a small, so I have the amount now. I have to go back. Can somebody do the math of what would be $225 times 5,000 students for 6 months. It's like $80,000 or more than that. I had it written down somewhere. Can someone just do the math real quick for that? I don't know, I had it written down.
225 times 1,000 times 6. Is that what you said?
Oh, 5,000. So if we said kind of like 5,000 students would probably qualify. And so then they get $225 per month.
That's like
And then they
6.75 million.
For 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot, but yeah. So that's a lot of money. There is no way a food pantry could provide that amount of food. No way.
So there was a question in the chat that you might want to answer before we go on. LP asked what happened with the unused funds, like the number you had on a few slides back. There was the money that was going unused. What happened with that, or what happened? With it?
The government keeps it. Yeah, government keeps it. Yeah. So it's like the funding budget. So it goes into the Farm Bill, which some of you in sustainability will know about. And so in that Farm Bill, they have earmarked for SNAP program, and all these other programs. And so if that budgeted amount for the SNAP program isn't used, it's just, kept or perhaps used for something else.
Does that also mean that they get less funding the next year? Because I know for my church, I'm obviously accountant, and if they don't hit like how much they said they were going to spend, they get less the next year. Is it the same way?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Because I don't know, because they just loosened the qualifications for college students with SNAP, so increased, significantly the number of students who are qualified. So I don't know if that was added from the COVID relief bill or if that's what they already had. I don't know anything about that. Yeah. And so part of the Farm Bill also is free reduced lunches for K through 12. and that's what they're trying to actually do to bring to college. So if you qualified for free reduced lunch in, you know, K through 12, then you would qualify, but it would be like a dining meal plan. So it would be that free reduced plan, because if you're food insecure, if you're on a free reduced lunch, a senior in high school, do you suddenly have resources for food when you enter NC State? No. So here are a couple of things with SNAP by design, why college students use it. And so again, SNAP is set up for the traditional student. So again, it goes back to where it is not, there's like such a strong work requirement that it is hard for students to meet those requirements of work volunteer. The college students actually have a more strict work requirement than other populations with those SNAP programs. The other thing with discrimination in SNAP is a SNAP fraud. So there's this whole piece, like people are going to steal SNAP, you know, and they're going to sell their cards and do schemes and all of that stuff. So we need to quit SNAP because of the rule breaking, I think. But it's only at 1.5% of any crime. But when you Google it, there's one that comes up that's where one guy in North Carolina did fraud up to like $4 million, or no, $400,000. And it's like, is anybody in NC State gonna like start a SNAP fraud program? It's just, yeah. Anyways. Oh, sweet charity. Yes. So this is where food pantries are actually damaging to systematic change. So when you look at it again, the university is so proud of having a food pantry. That is like their number one thing. They say it's like, we have a food pantry, we have a food pantry, we have a food pantry. So then it diverts from like, well, what's actually systematic change? Do they make, do decision makers look at saying, oh, only a few percentage of food insecure students are using the food pantry, so what else do we need to do? No, we have a food pantry, we have a food pantry, we have a food pantry. And so that's the piece of, as when they say, look at our food pantry, we get this great food pantry, and then you say, and what else? So food pantries have never solved hunger in the history of time. So that's the piece of, we have a food pantry, and what else? So we have had a food pantry for 7 years. I helped start it. And still after 7 years, still only like a very small percentage of students are using it. So it can't be awareness. It's been here for 7 years. And so then if you have never read Sweet Charity, that's where you can go in, where the Sweet Charity, it's again, it's about the donor. It's not about actually solving the problem. And so that's where going upstream with that policy shift. So I don't know what we're at with time, but what are some solutions, and I say this, for 7,000 students? So we did a webinar the other, like 2 weeks ago, and this whole thing, and the first comment was, what about a food cart in the library? So, and then you say, great, a food cart, how is a food cart in the library going to meet the needs of 7,000 students? Because we're not talking about a field here. We're not talking about snacks. I mean, it's nice because, again, I can't eat a can of peas in the library, so it's necessary. So what would be a solution for 7,000 students? Is
for the
food
college
pantry
to talk about it?
Mhm.
Like for there to be some systematic change in just the administration of the college?
Yeah, totally.
Mhm.
To erase that stigma and kind of publicize, this is a resource for you and take it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then when you look at the connection between education justice and like graduation rates, so the disparity of graduation rates with under-resourced students, and then the disproportionate number of that same populations of under-resourced, like that are not graduating, are also more likely to be food insecure. Is that connection, do you think, significant enough for the university to say, to meet our education mission, we need to address, like food security is one of those things that we need to address. For like access to technology. That's a huge access to libraries. And so is access to food is as important to education advancement as access to food. So that's that when it comes to the basic needs. And I know technology is a huge thing. Again, access to time, so students have time to do research and to devote that to research and community involvement. And so that's the piece too, is where you'll not have very many under-resourced students, like say active in Feed the Pack, because they don't have time to volunteer. So again, who are you discriminating against to not have them involved? So again, like they're not on that stakeholder, it still is that paternalistic, you know, where it's you're the client here, you know, it's like, no, this is your role as the client. So how do you, when you accept who they are, like having to work so many hours, etc., how do you involve them so that they can be a full functioning part of the campus and the university? And that's the big scam with unpaid internships. I don't know if you ever saw the one with Adam Ruins Everything on unpaid on summer internships, but it's one of the biggest scams going. Okay. So access. So this is what California has done, is literally a state law. And so they have a post-secondary education. You can, here's the links. So they have a student-free, hunger-free campus certification, and it's a part of an actual law in which campuses get a certain amount of money, and then they are kind of, they have to make progress towards in these certain requirements, which is in that, which I'll share. And so then for a sustainability, actually did for the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, is they had a SNAP Awareness Day. And so that's where putting it, and then again, that where they have application assistance hours, and that's the piece of normalizing it, bringing it into college students. As again, this is a resource for college students, period. Yeah, and so, oh, I messed up that. So it's a hunger-free campus certification. And so you can look at that for California. California is cutting edge. They have a lot of laws that have to do with what state institutions need to do with regard to college student hunger and homelessness. And our homelessness rates are higher than any University of California system school. So California has done where they've made state laws and their homelessness rates are lower than NC State's. And that's the piece where Wake County, there is no housing affordability. So again, it's saying, this is what another state is doing and they're better off than we are. And so here's an example of a SNAP partnership that I do with Trio Pack Promise programs with Wake County SNAP. And so we have a commitment saying that they're going to help us, we're going to help them. We have a single point of contact, I'm that, and then I work with a single point of contact in the SNAP office. And so we talk all the time. We help with student applications. I identify the students who would automatically qualify that we know of. And the university knows those. The university knows all the students who have a 0 EFC. The university knows all students who were eligible for SNAP. So I identify those students, and then we create like this application pipeline so that they have all the documentation. They've done office hours throughout the semester of showing students how to complete that application that is specific. They've made it so students only have to take literally a picture with their phone of, the screen, like their FAFSA that says 0 EFC. They don't have to print out anything. They've done that, so it makes it a lot more accessible for a student. Yeah, post-application assistance hours. So again, one person, but again, there's nobody else on campus that would have that job. There's nobody, there is no person that has that responsibility on campus. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to hire staff that this was food and housing insecurity would be what they would address. And so I can send a thing of how you would apply. Is there other SNAP? You're gonna have to tell me if there's other things in the chat because I can't see it. Nope. Okay. So that's where it is very possible. During this time of COVID, where more people are qualified for SNAP, Wake County DHS is more busy than they've ever been. They still take the time and effort and to appoint one of their staff who their specialty is just Trio Pack Promise students. And they've made accommodations with regard to all that paperwork. So where to go from here? There's a Student Basic Needs Coalition. Does anybody belong to that? So that's a national organization that was started by a student on campus. And so that's where NC State, like, you're really going to do stuff because she started the national organization. And then there's PEAK training, which is an advocacy training that's similar to the GBLT advocacy training or the green training. It's not as intense as those, so you can complete that. And that's that. That's PEAK in the student group. And then Confronting Stigma. This is a podcast, and it's done by Trio students for Trio students, and it highlights under-resourced students and what they talk about homelessness, they talk about being food insecure, and all of those. And so you get a very intimate idea of, like, say, your fellow NC State student, where you may know these students, but again, that conversation is never going to come up of do they have access to housing or food. And so then what are your next steps? So what do you think, Gracelyn, for the stewards?
Yeah, I was going to say, as that I feel like this is something that the environmental justice team could definitely work at. Specifically, like, our energy team has been doing like certifications for Tally to be like more, energy sustainable. So why couldn't we work on helping NC State get the certification to be more food secure and all of those things? So I feel like, and also just I saw that the Houston, Texas, was it Houston, Texas? No, Knoxville. The Knoxville SNAP Day was hosted by their sustainability office. So like, why can't our sustainability office do that? So I think that's definitely our next steps as an environmental justice team and our food justice team to work on that.
Yeah, so I just put in the chat box a copy to the access to that presentation, so you have those links.
Thank you. Are you okay with us putting this on our website?
Yeah.
Or do you want us to culminate like certain parts of it?
No, I need to clean it up because I pulled slides from other presentations. But again, I think you can choose what slides would be most appropriate. Because again, like, if you have too many slides, they're not gonna, so if it's like down to 5 slides, it's easier to click through.
Yeah, for sure, I can do that.
So, so you have a SNAP Assistance Day. What would you do, Mancini? I feel calling you weird, man. I was playing. Are you going?
I don't know. I was kind of thinking about meal plans because, like, that was definitely a struggle for me last year, living on campus and having to have that because they don't really like suit the needs of students very well. Especially, like, I lived in Avent Ferry residence halls, and there's no dining halls close to there. And how am I supposed to make time to go to a dining hall when I wake up at 6 a.m. and go to work on Centennial and then go straight to classes and then have clubs and volunteer and all of this? Like, how am I supposed to set aside time to get the healthy food that the campus offers at the dining hall, like, instead of just getting like the crappy food options and Tally? So I ended up like not my proudest moment, but I definitely yelled at someone in the Wolf Card 1 office. I was like, I know this isn't your rule, but just like tell me who I need to yell at to get this requirement waived, because this is money that like would much better serve me like going to a grocery store. And I had like never even considered SNAP as like something I could have done. I don't know. So that's been a useful reflection for me, but also I've kind of been thinking about how like even if you do have this grocery money, if you're living on campus, like even though there are like campus kitchens and stuff, like I would go and try and rent like a pan or something, or check out a pan from the service desk, and they don't have that. So like if you don't have supplies to cook, like, you're not going to be able to give yourself a good meal. So I don't know, I guess maybe that's what I would do for like a SNAP day, is try and figure out ways to get some better like kitchen supplies at service desks, or I don't know, something. Lots of abstract ideas. That was a good stuff, but
yeah, and so that's the thing also is like, say for Trio, I don't know if Hilly can verify, but that's where like a student could come to us saying, I need cooking, and we can get that for them, whether it's buying it, but getting it donated, etc. But on campus, there is nobody that you could go to. I mean, I guess if you had, like you were close to a faculty member or an advisor saying, I need cooking, you know, stuff, but there's no person that you can go to and ask for that. And that's that piece of having that point of like a person that's what they're dedicated to, is to ensure you have everything you need to be successful as it comes to basic needs. Veronica, thank you. Let me know if there's anything else I can do. And the other piece too, I thought of, which it would just have to be, and I guess it's like the thing with Awareness Day, is that if you have people, say like Mancini, who you know qualify, and so get them set up, like, so they've committed, like, yes, I'll apply on that day. So then you can market it to bring attention, saying, we hosted one day, this, many hours, and this is like how many people who qualified and applied, and then say like, this was this amount of money that we infused into our students' pockets. And so then again, that's that piece of, if you don't know, people on campus do not know, faculty and staff do not know. We live in very segregated societies. So if you have a PhD, the likelihood that you're interacting with somebody that talks about SNAP is very unlikely. And so that's the piece of, even if a faculty member knew that there was a college student SNAP program, even, them referring a student to it in different things. So again, I guess like the awareness, but also the application assistance, and that they do like social media. So you show it to normalize it. Again, because it's normalized to go to the food pantry. So why is it normalized to go to the food pantry? Everybody talks about it over and over and over again. There's awareness to it. But again, it's not serving necessarily nutrition, dietary needs, nor religious restrictions. So, yeah, so I would encourage you to partner with that group, the Student Basic Needs Coalition. If there's, obviously that would match with your food justice, and it would be complementary clubs, but also to advocate saying, we had 10,000 students who were housing insecure. Like 10,000, that's not students who don't know how to manage their money right. Like that's not students who are renting luxury apartments knowing they don't have any money, where it's like, you all know, there's no options other than the luxury apartments, I think now the average rent is $700 per month, and people are paying more. But so what is the university going to do about, and then with housing insecure, they're less like their grades suffer and their wellness suffers. And so what's that? What role can the university play in that? And then again, that peak training, so that you can get that certification. and then also add to it. So a student started that and put that together. And so that's the piece of it. If you value with that, saying to the university, we have 10,000 students who are housing insecure. Like, it is important that people on campus know about this and how to best serve these students. So there's 10,000, like a third of the students in theory for housing insecure. Are there enough people on campus that can address that? Because if you go to one person saying, I can't pay my rent, what do I do? So who would you say that to? Advisor, faculty, work supervisor? And they're like, I don't, you know, or they tell you something that doesn't work out. You know, it's like, oh, I heard on the news that there's rent assistance, you know, and it's like, well, then you don't qualify, like, do you even qualify for that? So that's the piece of, does the university have a responsibility for educating themselves about, this is your student population. You have housing insecure, homeless, and food insecure students. This is the population you're serving. This is not the traditional 18-year-old to 22 from middle class, upper middle class families that are supported by their families. Okay, so you can contact me anytime. I ran over, I apologize, but please let me know how I can
This was great.
help you in furthering, you know, what you want to do. Because again, I can tell you who to yell at. That's not a problem. I've got their names and numbers. One of the big time donors made a mistake of CCing me on an email that's with Randy Woodson's like personal email address. I was like, that was a wrong thing to do. Randy does not want me having his personal email address. But anyhow, but that's the piece where there are, with that student group, the peak training, you know, with say SNAP awareness with the COVID relief, because that's where you can tie it to the COVID relief bill. I mean, that's where you have a structured, you have something to share, you know, saying do this. So it's not like obviously it's kind of like, oh yeah, we have this problem, what do we do? It's like you've direct, you know, solutions that have, yeah, addressing that. Anything else? Please apply to SNAP. So you still don't know how to apply for SNAP, so let me, and it's difficult because there's not, and because you can even like videotape yourself doing it or whatnot, because then that's going to be educational for people. So here's the online, and there's a PDF version. And it is super confusing for college students. That's why it's important to have. But if you need help, let me help you with that application. But again, just fill out as much as you can, and then just make sure to say college student, NC State college student, your name, email address, and then they can get back to you as to what you may have like done wrong or left empty. So it's better to leave empty than putting in the wrong information, because when it's put in empty, then they'll call you or email you for that information rather than just saying what you put in was the truth, and so then you're denied.
Is this link good for like any North Carolina like university?
Yep. So this is anybody in
or public, doesn't matter.
Yeah, any county. So then if you're living in Wake County now, like on campus or in apartments, so then we have that like specifically where it goes to Wake County, but that e-pass, thanks Emily, is the same application wherever you are in the state of North Carolina. So, but anyway, so you can do that. I would do the PDF and then fax it or email it in, or you can email it to me and then I can email it into them. But again, I think that's the thing of sharing your experience is I was denied or I didn't even know how to complete this application. I had to go through a point of contact at NC State. And so again, if 5,000 students were kind of saying, yeah, I bet 5,000 students qualify. So then what's going to happen to those 5,000 students is that if it took me, you know, say an intelligent adult, you know, I couldn't do it, or, you know, after 20 minutes, I just wanted to quit. Like what needs to have happened to make, you know, have this happen. So more in my basket is the on-campus SNAP assistance office. So they'll do trainings. I'll send you this. So you can contact them to do trainings or application assistance. And they serve the entire state of North Carolina. So again, if you have friends, family in North Carolina that are not in Wake County, more in my basket in the system. They work with all the different counties in North Carolina.
Thank you so much. This was like perfect and gives us like a lot of places to go after the symposium is over.
Yeah, and you have to do things, and this is the time to do it because people have compassion for COVID. It's like, you know, but what it did was expose the fragility. So students are at risk of losing their jobs all the time. So again, somebody becomes housing insecure because they lost their campus job, didn't get hours, or over Christmas break or winter break. And so that's the piece is, are you, how many hours or what job, what is your risk level? And so just now more people lost their jobs, more, you know, and so then they're like, oh, this is stressful. Oh, I didn't have control, you know, over this. And so that's the piece where you had people who weren't fragile, had multiple support systems, and now they can empathize because they've experienced it themselves. So losing a job is not going to stop after COVID. You know, for college students, so you lose one job, what are you gonna do? So one of our community board members wants to come up with a cost of living to be an NC State student. So what does it actually cost to be a successful NC State student? And that's year round, because you have summer undergraduate, co-ops, internships. So the university has cost of attendance as $23,000. But what is the actual cost to be like a fully engaged student? So that $23,000 has nothing to do with study abroad, even like say unpaid internships, or transportation to internships, undergraduate research, again, cost of food, like what is the average cost of food on campus? And so that's the piece of say cost of living. It's like, no, a cost of living on campus or having a meal is $18 a day for food. So my food budget needs to be $18 a day. And there is no person that would say that is an appropriate amount to spend on food. No person would ever say that. But I think that's like, you know, if you want to be a part of that, of him figuring it out, he's a finance guy. And so that's where he was like, no, this needs to be what is an actual cost of being successful at NC State year round, because college is a year round. There is no summer vacation at all. So that's another opportunity. I didn't bring that up, but anyways. Okay, I can go on forever. Thank you for your